All right, hello everybody. I think that's it. Thank you for coming to my presentation on transgender activism. Um, it's very nice to see everybody, especially faces I recognize. Uh, Thank you for supporting me. All right, so let's get started. It might take me a hot second. Here we go. Okay, let's see. Present. All right, so welcome to my presentation. It's on activism in the transgender community, from Stonewall and beyond. And it says from Stonewall and beyond, but that isn't to say that transgender people haven't existed from before Stonewall. They've been around for as long as anybody has. Here you can see some like pictures relevant to transgender people. Appreciate them. All right, before we begin, trigger warnings. This presentation will discuss in detail acts of violence being committed against LGBTQ+ people. It'll be documenting transphobia and homophobia. All right, to start off, my name is Lewin. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a member of GSA. We meet Wednesdays at 2:45, and you can email Mr. Stair at that email there if you'd like to attend the meeting. Here are some norms for how this presentation should go. I'd appreciate it if when you're asking a question or you're typing or something, just like show your camera so I can see your face, see if I'm fully answering your question. All right, so I'd like to start out with what pronouns are and why they're so important. So, why do people change their pronouns? First of all, people change their pronouns to better fit their gender identity, to better express who they feel inside. You can see like the most common pronouns are she, her, and he, him, but there's also they, them, theirs, which is many people were like, oh, it's plural, but no, it's used as singular very often, and it has been for a very long time. There's also Z here, Z there, Z them, but that isn't to say that those are the only ones. There are many. You should respect people's pronouns because, as I said, it's a very important part of people's identity, and it's just basic human decency. Next, who are transgender people and why are they activists? Well, anybody who doesn't fully identify as the sex they are assigned at birth can identify as transgender, which is also often used as an umbrella term, regardless of their sexual orientation or background, etc. They've been fighting for rights in their personal lives, such as being able to go out without being catcalled or harassed or even hate crimed. They've also been fighting for equal rights and protections under laws that seek to oppress them and deny their basic human rights, such as the trans panic / gay panic defense, or like various bathroom bills restricting trans people from using their preferred restroom. So some transgender activists are Marsha P. Johnson. You can see her on the upper right there. She was a black drag queen and trans woman who led the uprising at Stonewall. Afterwards, she joined the Gay Liberation Front and co-founded STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. You can see she died in 1992, but she was actually murdered. Her body was discovered in the river, and police just dismissed it as a suicide, even though it was clear it wasn't because she was a transgender woman. And not only that, but a person of color. Next, we have Sylvia Rivera, you can see on the upper left. She was a trans, non-binary Latina woman who co-founded STAR and was involved in the Stonewall riots and railed against lesbian and gay advocates for excluding trans people. Next, we have Stormy DeLavere, a black drag king that identified as several gender identities, who threw the first punch of the Stonewall riots after being called a gay slur by an undercover cop in the Stonewall Inn Stormy was also a bouncer at. Then you have Lou Sullivan, transgender gay man and trans right activist. He lobbied the American Psychiatric Association and World Professional Association for Transgender Health to remove sexual orientation from criteria. founded the GLBT Historical Society in San Francisco. All right, don't mind me, I just took a sip of water. First of all, to really understand why transgender activists and activism is such a big deal is to identify traditional beauty norms. They're norms that are expectations for how people look and act based off the gender binary. It expects men to look rugged and handsome and women to look delicate and beautiful. And transgender people can't always offer that, either because they don't want to or various reasons why, they can't, such as medical or, you know, just restricting factors. And because of that, they're often attacked, harassed, misgendered. It's also a big player in why the trans panic defense is such a big deal. The binary gender system is also a classification of gender into two distinct opposite forms of masculine and feminine, which is what the traditional beauty norms latch onto. And like because of this, it's really just like gender for a lot of people isn't just a male and female, it's a spectrum of different ways to identify. So saving transgender people and cisgender people who don't conform totally means dismantling the traditional beauty norm and binary gender system. Next is activism in the bathroom. Transgender people are more likely to be attacked in the bathroom that aligns with their sex than to go to the one which more aligns with their gender. Because oftentimes they don't fully look like they're assigned sex at birth anymore. They look different. So going in there just results in harassment. The transgender community has fought for bathroom rights, in particular one man named Gavin Grimm. In 2015, he was allowed to use the boys' bathroom as part of his social transition. He used the bathroom for 2 months until the school received so many complaints from parents that they stopped allowing him. And he then went to court over the ability to use his preferred bathroom, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. In the end, the court ruled in favor of Grimm, as the discriminatory law passed by the school district violated Grimm's rights under the 14th Amendment. Next, we go on to the trans/gay panic defense. This panic defense is a legal strategy jury uses to find that a victim's sexual orientation or gender identity/expression is to blame for a defendant's violent reaction, up to and including murder. It's not a freestanding defense, but it's more of something to add on to bolster other defenses. So you use this and then say it's not first-degree murder, and then it'd get knocked down to manslaughter or something. By fully or partially acquitting the perpetrators of crimes against LGBTQ plus victims, it implies that their lives are worth less than others. Despite widespread protest, the defense is still being used today. It's only been banned in 11 out of 50 states. You can see the states and the date, the year it was banned on the left. So for some of the pictures though, in about the middle, you see a young man with bleached hair. It says 89 in the corner. It's a picture of Matthew Shepard in San Francisco. He wasn't transgender, but he was a gay man. And he wasn't very old at all. He was only 23 when he was picked up by two men, driven out past city limits, and beaten until he was unconscious and left to a fence post. In the upper left corner, you can see a shrine to where he lay in the cold for 19 hours before being found. He was taken to the hospital and eventually died. Right below that, you can see a picture of Brandon Tina. He was a trans man born in 1972. When he was about 22, he was assaulted by two men, and then he filed a police report. And you'd think that the men would be arrested or something, but eventually Brandon refused to talk to the police because the officer was asking weird and disrespectful questions about Brandon's sex. The officer also refused to charge the two men because what kind of a person was she? The first few times we arrested her, she was putting herself off as a guy. This is in reference to Brandon. It was there was such disrespect against him for how he identified that the perpetrators of this violent attack didn't even get any sort of like uh, retribution, which left them free to then find Brandon again, uh, assault him again, and eventually murder him. He was only 23 years old, but luckily this time the two men were actually charged with murder. And on the right, down below, there are pictures of Venus Extravaganza. She was a trans woman born in not 1988. I'm not sure when she was born, but she was out and proud. She was, for being such an out and proud trans woman, she was like a protector of other younger transgender people. She was an activist, an icon. She was a model. She was eventually strangled, murdered, and shoved under a hotel bed where she laid for 3 days before being found by police. Her murder was never investigated. Nobody was ever charged for the crime. She was 23, and she was involved in the documentary Paris is Burning, which came out in 1990. It's a very good documentary. It's all about the like kind of gay / drag scene that you can see. Brandon Tina is also the subject of the biography Boys Don't Cry. He was actually 21, sorry, not 23. Yeah, next is the conclusion. Transgender people are vulnerable members of society, and they need to be respected, just like anybody else would be. Be supportive, be educated, and have empathy for what they're going through. I'll leave you with this quote, which is, "The only way I will rest in peace is if one day transgender people aren't treated the way I was. They're treated like humans, with valid feelings and human rights. Gender needs to be taught about in schools. The earlier the better. My death needs to mean something." Leela Acorn. She was a 17-year-old transgender woman, and because of harassment at school and at home, she killed herself. Now, a lot of this is really heavy stuff, and so you might not expect it to maybe be taught in schools, but even the Stonewall riots aren't mentioned in our yearbooks at all. There's no sort of information about any of this. I didn't know that you could be transgender or even gay until I was in 8th grade. I knew something was different about me in 4th grade, but even then, I didn't want to say anything because I knew it would only cause trouble for me or my family. So just, think about that. Think about how you can make it so other people don't have to suffer like these people did or like I did. All right, after that, are there any questions? Any at all? Doesn't even have to be about specifically anything you saw, but anything about LGBTQ plus issues or ideas or anything.
Did you re-dye your hair because it looks different?
Unprofessional, and yes. Any other questions? Anybody?
Sure, I'll ask a question, Lynn.
Go ahead.
When you were showing not the transgender people, because I don't think necessarily this person's transgender, but when you were showing the beauty norms,
mm-hmm.
you had Harry Styles in there for your beauty norms.
Yes.
We've talked about this before. Why is Harry Styles there? Because when I think of Harry Styles, I'm not thinking transgender.
Yeah, Harry Styles is in here because he regularly bucks gender norms. He wears skirts, he wears dresses. I think he paints his nails as well.
So a good example of somebody who's bucking the trend of fitting into one category.
Yes. Now, is there anybody else who wants to ask a question? I promise I don't bite.
I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So where did you find all this information? I really want to.
So I found out a lot of it through Tumblr. I found out that there were like transgender people, and then I followed blogs specifically. All of it I learned from self-study, kind of. I looked up the names of transgender people or gay people. I did a lot of research into like what they've gone through, into their organizations for transgender people, for LGBTQ plus people that mention people by name, the Trans Panic Defense on Wikipedia. A lot of this was on Wikipedia, which, as every teacher you've ever had will tell you, is not a reliable source of information. But you go down to, they say all their sources. So if that's not good enough for you, you can go down there. Lists of transgender people that have been murdered, uses of the trans panic / gay panic defense, all sorts of things like that. You could find, you can even watch Paris is Burning on Netflix. I think Boys Don't Cry is also on there. And you can watch tons of YouTube videos about this kind of stuff. All right. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
There were a couple of questions in the chat. One of them was, why call them a trans man or trans woman if they identify as that gender? Why can't we just call them a man or a woman?
That's a very good point, and it's, yeah, I totally agree with that. But just for the sake of this like slide, this whole presentation is important to mention like who they are and how they identified specifically. Also, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, and Lou Sullivan as well, were very open and proud of the fact that they were transgender. One thing about being transgender is that it doesn't always mean somebody who's transgender doesn't always, like, they're assigned male at birth. They don't always want to pass as a female and be looked at as a female. Sometimes they just want to be like, no, I am a woman, but also I have short hair and I like to wear men's clothes or something like that. Like, it doesn't always mean just strictly being man or woman, if that helps. Any other questions?
So I'm thinking that there's one little piece of information that somebody gave us that we'll save for the chat for you, because they mentioned another type of digital transgender archive. And then we have a lot of people waiting for our next session. So let's go ahead and say thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for, oh, I've just now figured out that I can look at chat. Whoops. That's all right. Next presentation. Thank you all so much for this, for listening and for being respectful. Thank you to my friends for showing up, and thank you, Mr. Stair, for being my super cool supporter. You're so rad. Bye, everybody.
Okay, we are admitting all new participants for round number 2. If you want to, do you want to start with your slides up first, or would you like to start just by yourself?
Sure. I have to, oh no.
Okay.
It's tiny again. Oops. Don't worry about it. It's, I've totally got this under control. I've got it handled for sure. All right. Hi. My name is Lewin Wolf. I use he, him pronouns. And I'm going to be presenting a presentation on activism in the transgender community. Now, the says from Stonewall and beyond, but that's not entirely accurate, because transgender people have existed since people have existed. They've always been there, and but Stonewall is one of the more important cultural movements for not only trans people, but LGBTQ plus people. And it's such an important civil rights moment, and yet it's not even, included at all in our textbooks. So to start off, here's some trigger warnings. This presentation will be discussing in detail acts of violence being committed against LGBTQ plus people. It'll be documenting transphobia and homophobia. So to start off, who am I? What club am I from? My name is Lewin. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a member of GSA. We meet Wednesdays at 2:45. You can email Mr. Stair, who is currently in the Zoom session. There's his email if you'd like to attend a meeting. Next, all right, norms. Here's some participation etiquette. If you're gonna ask a question, like, the voice chat, I would appreciate it if you could turn on your camera as well so I can see, like, if you're, appreciating, like, if my words answer your question properly. All right, so to start off on pronouns, way I introduced myself with he, him pronouns. I'm actually transgender, female to male, and pronouns are a pretty important part of people's gender expression, gender identity, transition, that sort of stuff. So here you can see like some more common pronouns: she, her, he, him, but also lots of people use they, them as well, which is used as a singular, not as a plural, like lots of people like to say it should be, but it isn't. It has multiple uses. There's also sie, her, sie, their, and sie, them, which are less used pronouns, but they are still used by people. Obviously, they should still be respected because, it's basic human decency, and it would be like calling somebody by the wrong name, which is referred to as dead naming in the regards of.
Hi all, we're just waiting to see if Luan's frozen condition changes here. So let's go ahead and give him a chance here to maybe hop back on in a second.
What happened?
Okay, we're back. So Luan, can you share your screen again? It's just a technical difficulty. Here we are in 2021.
Yeah, Zoom just tried to eat me. I just almost got silenced by the man. All right, loading. There we go. All right. So, they've been fighting. Transgender people have been fighting for equal rights in their personal lives, such as the ability to go out and not worry about being harassed, being assaulted, being hate crimed. They've also been fighting for equal rights and protections under laws that seek to oppress them and deny their basic human rights, such as bathroom laws that don't let people use the restrooms that align with their gender assigned at birth, and the trans/gay panic defense, both things I will be talking about in the next slides. Great addition. Marsha P. Johnson is our first transgender activist. You can see her in the upper right corner. She was a Black drag queen and trans woman who led the uprising at Stonewall. Afterwards, she joined the Gay Liberation Front and co-founded STAR, the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. She lived from 1945 to 1992. Now, you might be thinking she died of natural causes or some illness, but she was actually murdered.
Excuse me? I have to go to the bathroom.
Okay, sir, excuse me. We're gonna have to mute you, or don't worry about that. You can go ahead and do that. Thank you.
All right, so she was actually murdered, and her body was thrown in a river because she was not only
You're muted.
Hey, Luan, stop for a second, please. There you go. Now you're good.
Yeah. All right.
I have a question.
So, somebody say something?
Yes, I have a question. So what do
I'd super prefer if you waited until the end for questions, if you don't mind. All right, I'll take the silence as a yes. She was actually murdered, and her body was thrown in a river, because not only was she a trans woman, who was involved very much in the Stonewall riots, but she was a person of color. Her death was treated as a suicide, even though it obviously wasn't. It was never investigated up until very recently, 2016 even, by a LGBTQ plus person who wanted to investigate. Next is Sylvia Rivera, who was a trans non-binary Latina woman who co-founded STAR and was involved in the Stonewall riots as well. She also railed against lesbian and gay advocates for excluding trans people, which was a big problem, especially in the 60s, 70s, 80s, sometimes even now. She was also very good friends with Marcia. Next is Stormy Delavere. You can see her on the right bottom. She was a black drag king that identified as several gender identities through their life. They threw the first punch of the Stonewall riots after being called a gay slur by an undercover cop in a Stonewall Inn. Stormy was also a bouncer at. Next is Lou Sullivan, a transgender gay man and trans rights activist. He lobbied the American Psychiatric Association and World Professional Association for Transgender Health to remove sexual orientation from criteria and founded the GLBT Historical Society in San Francisco. He died of AIDS in 1991. Oops, okay. Next is activism and traditional beauty norms. So first, to start off, what is the binary gender system? So the binary gender system is a classification of gender into two distinct opposite forms of masculine and feminine with no in between. It affects things like dress behavior, looks, names, pronouns, etc. So people are expected to act like the sex they are assigned at birth to be accepted. So traditional beauty norms are something that latches on right to the gender binary system. Their expectations for how people look and act, and expects men to look rugged and handsome and women to look beautiful and delicate. And because transgender people can't always offer that or don't always want to offer that, they're often punished for it by being misgendered, harassed, or attacked, which comes into play again with the trans panic defense. Saving transgender people and non-conforming cisgender people means dismantling the traditional beauty norm and binary gender system. So next is activism in the bathroom. Transgender people are more likely to be attacked in the bathroom that aligns with their sex than to go to the one which more aligns with their gender. So in 2015, a young man, Gavin Grimm, was allowed to use the boys' bathroom in his high school as part of his social transition. He used the bathroom for 2 months until the school received enough complaints from parents that they told him he couldn't anymore. He eventually went to court over the ability to use his preferred bathroom, going all the way up to the Supreme Court. In the end, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Grimm. The discriminatory law passed by the school district violated Grimm's rights under the 14th Amendment. But he isn't the only one who has fought for this issue. It's still ongoing in a lot of places, and it's still a very big deal that doesn't get covered nearly often enough. Here is the part where it gets especially heavy regarding transphobia, homophobia. So if you're sensitive about those things, maybe mute or deafen yourself into the next slide. All right, so the trans gay panic defense. So the LGBTQ plus panic defense is a legal strategy that asks a jury to find that a victim's sexual orientation or gender identity/expression is to blame for a defendant's violent reaction up to and including murder. It's not a freestanding defense, but rather a legal tactic used to bolster other defenses. So that means that if somebody killed me and they were like, it's first-degree murder, and then they were like, no, listen, I thought I was like really upset when I found out he used to be a she or whatever, I'd be like, you know what, that's fair. Only manslaughter for you. Luckily, it's actually banned in Washington as a defense as of 2020. So it's by fully or partially acquitting the perpetrators of crimes against LGBTQ plus victims, it implies that their lives are worth less than others. Despite widespread protests, the defense is still being used in the 11 states it's been banned in. You can see over in the left, and the year it was banned. So long, you know, people have been alive, and to say that right next to the uh, right in between the picture, or picture of a man up, it says 89 corner. That is Matthew Shepard. I don't know if any of you recognize him, but he was a cis but gay man that
Okay, technical difficulty number 2. Let's give, oh, there we are. Sorry, Lewin, we got lost again. Lost in the Zoom.
yeah, Backstreet's back though. I'm here.
All right, well, we're back. Let's do it.
All right. Okay, back to Matthew Shepard. He was a young man. He was driven out past city limits. He was beaten, very violently attacked, and left for dead for 19 hours in the cold before he was taken to the hospital and eventually slipped into a coma and died. In the upper left corner, you can see actually a shrine to him at the place where he was beaten. He's been the subject of many different, of a book and a movie called Matthew Shepard Was a Friend of Mine, detailing his life. Right below that, you can see a picture of Brandon Tina, a trans man born in 1972. When he was about 20, he was assaulted by 2 men. He filed a police report and eventually refused to talk to that police officer because he was asking really rude and disrespectful questions about Brandon Tina's sex. The officer refused to charge the 2 men because, quote, "What kind of a person was she? The first few times we arrested her, she was putting herself off as a guy." The men found out that he, had reported them to the police and kidnapped him, violently assaulted him again, and then murdered him. They were then charged with murder, thankfully. In the lower right, you can see 2 pictures. Those are of Venus Extravaganza. By the way, Brandon Tina was only 21 when he died. Next is Venus Extravaganza, a trans woman who was out and proud. She was kind of a group mother of a home for LGBTQ plus youth, especially like drag kings or queens, or you know, and she protected them because she was also like a transgender woman but a drag queen as well. She was out and proud, and she was eventually strangled and murdered and shoved under a hotel bed for 3 days until she was found. Her murder was never solved, and probably never really investigated properly because she was, uh, a transgender woman. She was 23, and she was also involved in the documentary Paris is Burning, which came out in 1990. She was murdered during the filming of that movie in 1988. And so it coming out did include reactions of other people who had known her to her death, reacting to that. Let's see. Next, conclusion. So, transgender people are vulnerable members of society and should be respected. Be supportive, be educated, and have empathy for what they go through. I want to leave you with this quote, and then I'll say some more words. The only way I will rest in peace is if one day transgender people aren't treated the way I was. They're treated like humans, with valid feelings and human rights. Gender needs to be taught about in schools. The earlier the better. My death needs to mean something. Leila Acorn. She was a 17-year-old transgender woman, and she was bullied and harassed at school and at home, which led to her suicide. So a lot of these things you probably don't know about. You probably don't know about the Stonewall riots as it wasn't included in schools. It wasn't mentioned once in textbooks or in any history classes I was in, especially as it was a very important civil rights movement. None of this is taught in schools, and it's very detrimental to mental health and physical health as well. I didn't know about being transgender or anything like that, or gay, or lesbian, or bi, or what have you, until I was in 8th grade. I only knew in 4th grade that like something was different about me, something was not lining up, but I ignored it because I knew it would only cause problems. Um, there needs to be better help, better information for people who are LGBTQ plus to find at school, because it's really just kind of disgusting how like little information there is. Like all of this information I found by myself through going through Wikipedia articles and like different kind of websites. All right, now that that's done, are there any questions? Uh, anything at all?
I'm Ms. O'Brien, and I want to thank you so much. In my social media, I'm aware of many murders that are still occurring, and a part of what sometimes I struggle with for students is families that are maybe not accepting students and are not educated, or just refusing to accept, and that's, I think, a lot of what causes a huge amount of pain, aside from the legal issues that happen and the murders that happen, which is another great big huge thing. But that's part of what I deal with, and I struggle a lot with how to help students when their families aren't accepting.
Thank you. I have 2 chat questions. The first one is, what percentage of the population is trans? We don't really know for sure because of like not only do lots of people want to pass, like just completely go under the radar for being transgender, or they're not able to say. So the percentage I'm not sure of, but I think it's like it's officially documented as like 3%, but that was a while ago. Another question is, what should I do if I see someone being harassed for who they are? Stick up for them, like see what the problem is. If they're like handling it by themselves, maybe like stay and just see if they need extra help. If it escalates, step in, or if like it's like getting violent or aggressive, call the police, involve somebody else. Another question. The earliest I had the chance to learn about LGBTQ plus was when I was in late high school. Even though this is a difficult topic, when and how is the best way to integrate and teach this to younger future students? I think it would be best like in elementary school, just like the basics of gender identity, because lots of transgender people know that they're different when they're like way younger. You know, they know that like, oh, I don't really like vibe with what's happening, what I'm like kind of boxes I'm being put in. I think it'd just be best like when you teach like little kids stuff, it's like colors and blocks, you know. It can't hurt to be like, oh, and then this is sometimes, you know, you can be different like this specific way. Um, and especially I would say middle school for uh like identity for sexual orientation, because it doesn't always mean sexual. Obviously, it means romantic as well, and that's around the time you start getting crushes. So I just think it would be a good time to be like, and also you can experience a wide variety of things, because you know school's already hard enough without that kind of stuff. Next question is, what do pronouns mean, like Zim and Z? Those pronouns are for anybody who doesn't vibe with like just she and her. Like it's just another way to address people, like he or him. It could be for anyone to use, honestly. Like agender or bigender or non-binary, and that's just a couple. Oh, that's still okay. That's fine. Not necessarily. How do I take a screenshot again? It's that and then print screen. There we go. Yep. So if you send a fun question to me through chat, I've taken a screenshot, just so you know. Not necessarily related to activism, but at what age can you legally begin hormone replacement therapy, commonly referred to as HRT? I think in Washington, you can start it, I think it's 16 with parental consent, or at 18, you can go, especially to Planned Parenthood, which is what I plan to do when my birthday rolls around in about a month. And you can set up an appointment and start talking about that idea with them. Thank you so much for your presentation. I learned more about transgender than I knew prior to this. Thank you again. I'm super glad, and I'm really glad that helped you. My friend has been struggling to figure out their gender identity and whether or not they're trans. Do you have any advice I could give them? Just being supportive, first of all, like allowing them to like be like, oh, do you want me to refer to you as like different pronouns sometimes? Would that be better for you? Maybe like giving them resources if they want to know about them, you know, or like referring to them to somebody else who also went through different sorts of gender identity issues, which isn't to say that it's an issue, but struggles with the topic. What are transgender stereotypes that I should look out for? Oh, you're right, Mr. Sarah. They could also come to GSA just to see, because you don't even have to be, you could just be cis, which means you align with your gender, sex assigned at birth, or you could be heterosexual and you can come, just be an ally, hang out. We have such cool times there. It's rad as hell, as heck. What are transgender stereotypes that I should look out for? I think that means, like not, falling into them and like being more respectful. But like one big one is that transgender people are predators, like especially for transgender women. They struggle so much with being like, you know, like wanting to use a different like changing room, right? And then people like, oh, they're just going in there to spy on your children and look at them. And like how there's such a low amount of that happening. Oh, it's how do I stray away from these stereotypes? Just if you ever like find yourself like thinking those things, like stop, like reflect, be like, oh no, that's not true. They don't do that. There's or also like self-research. It's super helpful. Wikipedia, even though every single teacher you'll ever have will say Wikipedia is not a reliable source. It's actually super good for this. You can go down, they cite their sources, you can look those references. Those are great. If you mess up pronouns of person, what should you do? If you do, just like apologize and just fix yourself. Don't make a big deal out of it. Don't say, oh, I'm so stupid, I'm so sorry. Don't like make it about you. Just be like, oh crap. Yeah, no, sorry. And then use their correct pronouns. Continue on. Because it shouldn't be, you know, too big of a deal. They understand. And if they get upset, then like apologize, you know. You can figure out the situation past that, like once it comes. Thank you. I had no idea about any of this. I like giving hearts to people. That's very nice. I appreciate that very, very much. Thank you. Happy early birthday. I love this presentation. It made me even more aware than before. Thank you. What should you do if someone comes out to you as trans, non-binary, etc.? Also, you did really great. I'm not crying. That'd be weird. If you do, just try your best to support them. If you know any resources or any people who are also transgender and non-binary or, you know, LGBTQ+, you could totally just be like, oh, here you go. This is what I learned. Here's some help for you. I really hope you know, appreciate it. And just be there for them. Thank you so much for this presentation. I learned a lot of new things. I just wish they taught this in school. Yeah, it'd be really helpful. It'd cause a lot less stress and like mental health issues if people were aware this was an option. What do you think of all the ignorant people being insanely anti-pronouns without realizing that pronouns are no part of speech? Uh, us, I know what you're referring to, especially with like they them. They're like, oh no, that's for plural, but it's not, and it's recognized in like an official, um, like dictionary that they them can be used for singular. I think it's ridiculous. I think a lot of it is they just want to have a reason to like disrespect trans people, you know? Like even though they're like just regular people just trying to live their lives to the best of their ability and like really love themselves and stuff. It's like just they want to harsh on people, make them miserable, kind of like they are, I would assume. I have a friend who came out as trans last year. Thank you for helping me understand it more. I'm so glad I could help you, and congrats to your friend. I am a writer and I have trans friends. I'm glad I could be here to learn all of this. Ooh, I'm very excited to learn there's a writer here. I hope to read something from you one day. If you ever write anything, send it my way. I have total control of the GSA Instagram, so if it's related to that, I'll promote it. If it's related to LGBTQ plus issues, you know, I'm there. Mr. Stare doesn't have any control over it. He laughs because it's true. I'm have okay. That seems. Oh, there we go. What is Insta name? It is. Let me check. Ooh, we love to watch me tapping through my phone. That makes for interesting content. It is Everett underscore hi underscore GSA. I'm gonna type it. I'm gonna send it to all of you. Everybody in Everett. Yep. Underscore GSA. Okay, there we go. And then the profile picture is just it just looks like. There we go. Looks like that. That was interesting, but I'm gonna go get ramen now. Bye. Thanks. You're very welcome. I hope your ramen is fantastic. You know, don't spill it. One of my old friends came out as non-binary then transgender late last year. Thank you for giving us more information so I can support him. That's so cool that you're supporting him. I love that so much. That's really good. And congrats to your friend. And congrats to you for being a good, like, supportive, respectable person. Thank you for helping me understand this better. I have a lot of trans non-binary friends. This is a really great help. I'm so glad that you're like taking all of this into account and you're like willing and able to learn and like appreciate it fully. That's super cool. You know, I'm glad I could be here to help people. Like, I know there are a lot of school people in here, but a lot of them, like administration kind of, but a lot of them I feel have personally failed me and other LGBTQ plus people. I don't know if any of you know about the AIDS epidemic, but in the 80s, primarily it swept through the gay male community and it killed so many people. And all the while, the presidential administration did absolutely nothing. They ignored it. Now, if you go in your history textbook for U.S. history and you flip through to the section in the 80s, you will find one paragraph, the very back. And it was last year, but I'm not sure if it even mentioned any gay people. So also the Stonewall riots, they weren't mentioned at all in the history textbook either, even though it had a big section on civil rights movements. So, you know, I'm glad that I can be here to help people like I was never helped, you know, just to build a community. And any of you can come to GSA, no matter what. You don't have to talk, you don't have to show your face, just hang out and chill with us. You know, I love people. I love to see you. You join the GSA. We have a group chat there. You can hang out. You can read through it. So I'll be best friends, dude. I'm ready. What should I do if a not very nice person tries to spread their hate? It depends. At first you should try and ignore it because you know lots of people sometimes want to. Mr. Stare. Unmute yourself.
I'm unmuting myself.
Yeah,
I
please.
wouldn't say ignore it. If somebody's being disrespectful or mean,
Yeah.
what you should do first is try to reason with them, explain. If that doesn't work, you should go to someone you trust who's an adult type person, talk to them. And if that doesn't work, come to someone like me and we'll get you hooked up with someone in the office who can help.
Oh, I was assuming this meant more of like in the real world, not at school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was taking a different way then.
Yeah. No, at school, that's a very good advice, and you should all listen to Mr. Stair because he's a very knowledgeable and wise man.
I'm remuting myself now.
All right, please do. Disrespectful. Don't listen to me. I'm just joking with Mr. Stair. He's very cool and good. Don't worry. If it's in like outside of a school place and it's not connected to the school in any way, if it's online, just try and ignore it, block the person, if it's like face to face or something, it depends on what kind of hate they're trying to spread. If they're trying to be like physical aggressive towards you, if you feel threatened, you can always call the police, but I understand that's not always an option because a lot of times they won't help the right person or they'll make the situation worse. So calling somebody preferably somebody who's tall or broad, having pepper spray on you if you're going to be attacked, because that happens a lot of times. But also, like Mr. Stair said, if it looks like they're kind of coming from like they really believe this stuff, but like not in a totally aggressive way, maybe try and reason with them. Try and be like, hey, no, that doesn't have to be like this. They're, trying to explain things to them. Any other questions? I'm down for any questions at all. As I sip water out of the world's biggest cup.
I just want to say thank you so much for this presentation. And I would just add to what you said is, we want to make sure that you're always being safe, whether you're at school or you're outside the school. And so if someone approaches you, especially in a threatening matter, right? Your safety is number one. We only get one of your perfect selves, right? And so definitely make sure that you are responding, and there's nothing wrong with I love asking a question back to whatever I was asked if I've asked something crazy. And so maybe you can just say, you said this and this is what I'm hearing. Is that what you meant to say? Just questioning them. So I just want to say thank you for your presentation. This is great, but make sure you're always definitely staying safe because we only get one of you.
Thank you so much for your comment. That's really nice and like supportive and really good. I don't think I've ever heard somebody use that saying before. There's only one of you. That's very nice and good. Thank you so much for being here. This is the kind of community that I don't get in my day-to-day life. Like there's no community of like LGBTQ plus people that I can just like hang out with like in real life. Obviously COVID, so we wouldn't because we're all responsible. All of us. Thank you for the nods. We are, yes. But like just, living, especially as somebody who's like a minor, like there's no way, like really easy way to connect with people who are LGBTQ plus like around you to like actually, besides like GSA or something. So it's very difficult to find like a sort of community. Once again, GSA, we've got a Instagram chat, not monitored by adults, so you can say cuss words like heck. Very fun and nice. We're supportive. We share good emojis that are rainbow colored. Is that all? Everybody done? Come on, here's your last chance. You are amazing. You may want to send people to lunch now. Mr. Stair, they're all trapped here forever. They're my friends. I've taken. I don't think you understand how this works. You can't get off this ride. All right, so yeah, if anybody, last minute questions, really quick. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.